Welcome back to the American Dairy Science Association meetings. We're here once again with Tanya France from Cornell University and Joe McFadden, her advisor at Cornell University. Tanya, you have a presentation tomorrow the title is Effects of Feeding Rumen-Protected Methionine and Calcium Salts Enriched with Omega-3 Fatty Acids on Lactation in Periparturient Dairy Cows. Joe, I understand that this was your idea. This was the genesis. Can you talk us to how you came up with the idea?
Yeah, no problem. There's plenty of evidence to show that rumen-protected methionine feeding in transition cows has a lot of beneficial effects on milk production and metabolic health. It acts as an antioxidant that enhances something called the transsulfuration pathway that is really important to help cows mitigate the negative effects of oxidative stress, and has this ability to reduce inflammation. So that's really important as a nutritional therapy for transition dairy cows. Omega-3 fatty acids, especially very long-chain omega-3 fatty acids like those that come from fish oil, a little less work focused on their effects in transition cows. But again, they're anti-inflammatory, generally recognized as being health-promoting components of the diet. And so we want to look at the synergy between those. There's some hypotheses related to liver function and how they can work together, both methionine and omega-3 fatty acids, to really optimize liver function. And so that's one of the things we wanted to explore with this study.
All right, very well. My co-host for this session is Dr. Ken Sanderson. Ken works for Balchem. Ken, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So, hi, Scott. I'm with the company now, actually, for the second time. I've been in the industry for 40 years, but the last 3 back with Balchem in the role of global business development. And I work on a number of different projects, including some of our research work as well.
Oh, very well. Have you met Tanya yet?
I have met Tanya.
Right.
We had a chance to listen to Tanya's presentations yesterday.
All right. Yeah, excellent. Well, Tanya, why don't you tell us a little bit about the research?
Yeah, so this study was looking at basically the co-supplementation of omega-3 fatty acids and rumen-protected methionine, and we started feeding 79 Holstein dairy cows at about 3 weeks prepartum, and we followed them through to about 4 weeks postpartum, co-supplementing them. And during this time, we did weekly blood sampling, milk sampling, liver biopsies 3 times for each cow, and really wanted to measure the effects of the combination supplementation of the rumen-protected methionine and omega-3 fatty acids. The other 3 treatments were without both of those, or with just adequate methionine, or with just omega-3 fatty acids.
One thing I'll add to that is that typically in the field, you're not feeding a lot of added fats to close-up diets. But we did do that in this particular study. Total fatty acids in the diet were 1.5% of ration dry matter from the close-up period through early lactation. There's a lot of science that we're thinking about in terms of why we did that. One of the things that were sort of a secondary objective of the study is to investigate the effects of these nutrients, methionine and omega-3 fatty acids, on sort of the microbial composition. And doing that with some fecal samples is what we're going to do, and how that might relate to changes in gut permeability. So that's sort of a long-term objective that's not presented here at today's conference, but it's something that's on our mind, and that's sort of why we went with a longer sort of feeding duration for the supplemental fats. The production outcomes were really strong. I'll let Tanya talk about that. But it didn't hurt that we added it to the close-up diet.
So one of the questions that actually was shared with me about this abstract was related to the background of the other amino acids in the diet. So can you tell us anything about the lysine content, for example, in the diets, or do you have some?
Oh, you want to point to me?
Yeah.
You said you'd answer this one.
Okay. All right, yeah. So lysine was kept fixed as right around 7.1% of NP. And so we did put some rumen-protected lysine products in the diets to make sure that was sort of constant across all the treatments. When you look at the lysine to methionine ratio on the methionine deficient diets, that was closer to about 3-to-1. And on the diets that had the supplemental methionine in it, that ratio went to about, I believe it was like about 2.5-to-1.
Excellent. So there's been a fair amount of previous work looking at methionine and showing increases in dry matter intake in the postpartum period. And I guess we're curious about the mechanism and what you propose is the mechanism around that change in intake.
Really, we think it is more driven by the increase in milk production, which would influence their dry matter intake postpartum. So feeding adequate methionine is typically going to help partition more nutrients towards milk protein synthesis or just yield in general. So that being said, those increases in dry matter intake that you're typically seeing, we're suspecting it's due to increases in milk production from feeding rumen-protected methionine.
Yeah, the only thing I'll add there is to sort of say that, and if you look at the data, and we actually whenever we get it published, or if you look at the abstract, perhaps I forget what we wrote. The diets that were lowest in dry matter intake were the diets that were inadequate in methionine and unsupplemented with calcium salts containing omega-3s, meaning that the diets that had omega-3 fatty acids in it, but no methionine, they actually had greater intakes than those that were completely deficient in both nutrients. So I think I know what you're talking about, that there is this sort of consistency that methionine feeding does increase dry matter intake, but take that with a grain of salt, knowing that that was only observed in the completely deficient diets of both nutrients. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. You got a really significant production response, and I guess I want to hear a little bit about the synergy that you saw between the methionine and the omega-3 and a proposed hypothesis around why the synergy.
So I think that, and like Dr. McFadden said earlier, with evidence of improved anti-inflammatory responses with omega-3 fatty acids, I think there's something there with adding the omega-3s, kind of mitigating this inflammatory response in early lactation, kind of driving some of these improved production performances. So just having an overall healthier cow, healthier liver function, that could kind of drive utilization of nutrients in general towards higher production responses.
Yeah. The only thing I'll say to that is that, and look at actual milk yield. There was no effect on milk yield. It really came down to energy-corrected milk yield. And so the co-supplementation, that's where we saw the maximum benefit. It was over 5.5 kilos, I believe, right around there in energy-corrected milk and fat-corrected milk. I'll say that just supplementing the omega-3 fatty acids or just methionine also had significant gains in energy-corrected milk yield. So it was really the omega-3 fatty acids surprisingly driving milk fat production, and the amino acid methionine driving milk protein production. And so those two together sort of really optimized the response. Now, there's certainly a health component, and this study's ongoing in a way because we're still doing a lot of the sample analyses. She definitely mentioned this sort of inflammatory component that we want to explore, but we're also exploring liver function. One of the other abstracts she was looking at was liver functionality, sort of measuring it using an indirect approach. And co-supplementation of the 4 treatments had the best estimated liver function. And so we got to dive a little bit deeper into that to better understand the biology.
Yeah. Tanya, as we kind of wrap this up, can you kind of give us a couple key takeaways from the research, and then where do you see it going from here?
Yeah, so I guess one of the key takeaways I would say is people are kind of intimidated by fish oil supplements and dairy cattle because it's been shown to decrease dry matter intake and those kinds of things. And we were feeding at about 6 to 7 grams per day postpartum for EPA and DHA, and we saw these responses. So I think that's kind of a stepping stone and very long chain omega-3 fatty acid supplementing, considering there is no requirements or established feeding rates in dairy cattle at the moment.
Yeah, like this study we're talking about adequacy of methionine because we have some established requirements. When we think about omega-3 fatty acids, and especially very long-chain omega-3 fatty acids like EPA and DHA and fish oil, it's sort of uncharted in terms of the amount that we should be feeding. And I think this is at least a start in the right direction, and hopefully many more studies to come where we can tease that out. And because there are a variety of rumen-protected forms of these products on the market, calcium salts being one, but there's lipid encapsulated versions, there's versions with starch-resistant matrix, there's different types of encapsulation technologies that are out there, and so they're going to be available for farmers and nutritionists to use, and we need to know how much to feed. And what really complicates it is that I could talk about this forever, but omega-3 fatty acids also include 18-3 alpha-linoleic, and that would be the most predominant alpha-linoleic omega-3 fatty acid in the diet. But we don't know the relative sort of efficacy of an 18-3 versus the EPA and DHA, and so there's a lot of science there that we need to figure out as well.
All right, more research is needed.
Yeah.
Tanya, thanks for joining us here today. You've a very bright young lady. Your future is bright, and we thank you.
Thank you so much.
We'd love to hear your comments or ideas for topics and guests, so please reach out via email to anh.marketing@balchem.com with any suggestions, and we'll work hard to add them to the schedule. Don't forget to leave a 5-star rating on your way out. You can request your Real Science Exchange t-shirt in just a few easy steps. Just like or subscribe to the Real Science Exchange and send us a screenshot along with your address and t-shirt size to anh.marketing@balchem.com. Balchem's Real Science Lecture Series of webinars continues with ruminant-focused topics on the first Tuesday of every month, monogastric-focused topics on the second Tuesday of each month, and quarterly topics for the companion animal segment. Visit balchem.com/realscience to see the latest schedule and to register for upcoming webinars.